Welcome back to another episode of Miss Teacher Tube Green Edition with Janice Leon. Today we're going to do another grocery store experiment. Walking through the grocery store, I found that some of the things that I buy a lot have little root structures, and usually if you see a little root structure, you might be able to get that item to grow at home if you plant it. So living lettuce is something that I experimented with. I went and bought some from the grocery store. I bought the Living Lettuce Trio, and I came home and I planted it into, an emergency pot at first because I didn't have a pot to put it in, and eventually I got a self-watering planter and put it into a self-watering planter. It seems to really enjoy the planter. Well, let's see my journey with the Living Lettuce. Today I'm working in my backyard gazebo and I'm working on another supermarket experiment. So I went to the store and I bought, in a bag, living lettuce. And I thought, this has a root structure on it. I wonder if I can get this to grow in my house. So I don't have to keep rebuying it and I can just clip off what I need to make my salads. So I planted it here as an emergency because I didn't have any more pots left. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to transplant it to my self-watering planter, just so, it's got watering on a regular basis. I don't really have to worry about it. So far, it was pretty limp the first day after I put it in here. It's been in here about 2 days now. Just a little bit of potting soil with some rocks in the bottom and an emergency Tupperware container. So I'm going to now transplant it over. I'm using my same potting soil that I really enjoy using, which is the Miracle-Gro moisture control one. So I've already lined the bottom of my pot with the potting soil, and now I'm going to carefully take my living lettuce out of my emergency pot and put it in here. Give it a good watering, and we'll see if it takes root and if it's a plant that's going to be viable. So here we go. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to use my little tool here. I'm going to just carve around the very edge of the pot because I don't want to damage any roots that have stretched out a little bit. This plant has firmed up over the last couple of days. It's not as rigid as it was before. So now I'm just going to gently tilt it and ease it out of the dirt. Oh, here is a really good visual of what the root structure on here looks like. So you can see the roots are all kind of interwoven. Yeah, I'm surprised actually this survived. But we're going to transplant it into this pot, which should really help it with watering. I'm going to take a lot of the potting soil that I originally had around it and move it over to this pot, surround it with it. Now, there are a few varieties of living lettuce that you can get from the grocery store. The mistake that I made is when I got home, I had an important phone call I had to take, so I couldn't attend to my lettuce right away. I would strongly recommend first put it in a little bit of water, so like a bowl that has a little bit of water, just to activate those roots a bit, and then transplant it into your soil. Unfortunately, I got to my lettuce about 3 hours after I got home, which is not ideal. It was already looking a little bit sad. So I'm hoping that it bumps back quite nicely. So this is going to end up being another grocery store experiment that I'm going to add to my list. I still haven't shown you my chives yet, or I should say my green onions yet. They're pretty impressive. They took root, and I have a lovely massive green onion plant at home here. Never had to buy green onions again, and I'm really hoping that this living lettuce does the same kind of thing. It would be really nice if I could just add it to my collection and just snip off of it as I need salad for my salads. There. Now, ideally, just pat down the sides. Don't go too heavy. Again, we don't want to totally traumatize it, just enough to get it solid in place. You can see that this planter has a little gauge over here, so as I water, it'll show me how full the pot is. So I will get back to you and show you how my living lettuce gets along in a few days. Let me really water it and see what I can get going here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Welcome back. Well, that was my journey working with the living lettuce and the watering planter. I have to say, it's been about a week now since I planted my living lettuce into the self-watering planter, and my lettuce is doing fantastic. It's nice, I can bounce my hand off it, the leaves are nice and firm. It's at a point where I'm comfortable actually cutting off of it. I'll have my first salad tonight. With the self-watering planters, I want you to take a closer look at this model. This is not a Lechuza model. This is just a brand nameless model. I bought 4 online on Amazon for about 32 bucks, which in the world of self-watering planters is quite inexpensive. This one has a platform which allows the water to collect in the bottom, and then your soil sits on top of it, and you have your water gauge. Inside this water gauge is a little styrofoam ball that gets pushed up from the force of the water as your reservoir fills down below. So with this one, I find this brand, it's definitely not as good as the Lechuza. The Lechuza, you can pour directly into the reservoir and you can tell exactly when it's filled. Here, you are not permitted to pour directly into the reservoir in the bottom. You have to water it through the soil on top. Way more time-consuming way to water your plants, because this gauge bops around up and down the whole time you're watering it. It shoots way up to the top the minute you put any water in it, and then it has to settle, and then all of a sudden the ball comes down and your gauge goes back down. You realize, oh, the reservoir's not full, so you hit it with a little bit more water. So it's not as exact as just being able to pour directly into the reservoir. So really, they're not the greatest planters in the world. I still like the self-watering planters, even this style, better than a traditional plant pot, because again, I'm still not watering these as frequently as I'm watering standard plant pots. Like my onion experiment is in a traditional pot with a tray underneath, and that one, unfortunately, I have to water more frequently than this. This one, what's nice is when it runs out of water, I can just look at the gauge and I can tell, oh, my plant needs more water now. Otherwise, you're kind of guessing. You don't know how wet everything is underneath. This at least allows you some control to gauge how much water your plants are getting. So overall, the Lechuza gets top marks for me. This, it'll do. It'll do for my smaller experiments, but for my larger planting, growing experiments and projects, I definitely go with the Lechuza. Okay, for now, I'm gonna go make my salad. I'll see you next time. And again, if these videos are helpful and useful to you, please like and subscribe. Bye for now.